Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. 2 New York police officers were brutally assaulted in Times Square by a mob of illegal migrants who were arrested and let out right away with no bail. And joining us now to discuss, sadly, the war on police is Ed Mamet, a retired NYPD captain, and he's also the host of the Cop Talk podcast. Ed, great to have you here.
Well, it's always great to be with you, Rita.
You know, when I saw those images of those officers being so brutally beaten by a mob of illegal migrants, I was so angry. What was your reaction?
If you were angry, I was 10 times angry of having spent 40 years of my life in the police department. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. You know, in my time, first of all, that wouldn't have happened. And if it did happen, those perps would have been the sorriest people in the world, believe me. And you know what's really bothering me? I heard you talk earlier on the other show where you said that 4 of them have fled to California. Is that true?
Yeah, that's what we're hearing, that 4 of them have fled already to California. What does that say about the system?
The system is nowhere to be found. Nobody knows who they are. You know, I'm assuming, well, they were most likely were fingerprinted when they were arrested. But even so, there's no database to check them against. And we've discussed this before, because when a person is arrested, their fingerprints wind up in a central data bank at the FBI. And when they were arrested anywhere in the United States or the territories or other areas, that shows up. But because they're not in the database, they are now, it's going to be difficult. So, and besides, will the DA extradite them? This DA, I doubt it. So it's just a disgusting situation.
It really is. And it epitomizes, I think, in so many ways, so many big breakdowns in the system. The fact that, first of all, they came here. How many individuals do you think are really being vetted? I mean, and many people say this seems like sort of a classic case of why we need to vet each and every one of them before they come into the country.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole purpose of immigration and naturalization, is vetting people. And you know, it's also disturbing me. These people should be deported, but, you know, the president claims that they were brought in here legally, even though they're illegal, because he gave them permission to come in. So the question is, can ICE, even if they're willing to take these people and deport them, can it be done under the current situation set up by President Biden?
And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, ICE should take them and deport them, but the policies around the country in these various, woke cities is not to cooperate with ICE. But Governor Hochul, she came out today and she said they should be deported. The question is, can you deport them?
How complicated is it? Does it make it for law enforcement, Ed, when there is this sort of like who can do what and who can turn over what? The New York City police feels like they can't certainly do some things. There's reports that they can't go into the migrant shelters. They have to wait till they leave the migrant shelters.
Yeah, but that's not a law. That's the city policy. You know, and I don't understand that the logic behind that. If a crime is committed, police should be able to go into them. They're making these shelters as sanctuary shelters, but there's no law saying you can't do it. I mean, it's crazy. It
is crazy. And how much more complicated does that make it for law enforcement, Ed?
Well, it's very complicated because if they can't go in, what are they supposed to do? Wait until they come out? You know, so it's really weird. And the illegals seem to have more rights than the legals in this country. And, you know, let me tell you something else. prior to the 80s, the early 80s, when the police came in contact with a suspected illegal person, they would hold them. They would contact what was then the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and they would come and take the person. That was the end of it. They would get deported. Koch, when he was mayor, came out with an executive order that's still in effect through all these mayoralities that said the police are no longer to get involved in immigration matters. Now, most of us know that sooner or later these illegals will come in contact with the police, and the police are the perfect avenue to locate these people, apprehend them, and turn them over. But until it's made a policy, that's not going to happen.
So how do we change this? What do we need? Is it governmental change we need? Is it a mindset with the public change? Where do we start?
Well, I think we have to change things by getting rid of this current administration, getting the Republicans in power, and there's probably going to have to be legislation and revitalizing ICE. And I believe that the federal government should rescind the federal aid that goes to cities who claim they're sanctuary cities. And not only that, they get federal funding, which can be withheld. And this came up before, and I think under the Blasio administration, but it hasn't been followed through. But that's a powerful weapon, is to take away the federal funds from those cities that are protecting the illegals and won't let the police get involved or ICE get involved. So that it can be done. But the government has to have the will to do it.
Exactly. And right now, it sure doesn't look like the government has the will to do it. I want to also ask you, as we were looking at the videotape, sadly, of those two officers who were being kicked in the head, you could see the migrants just sort of laughing. And it looked like, to me, that they have obviously committed other crimes before, because they didn't seem to care that they were beating a police officer. I mean, to me, if you're going to beat a police officer, you have so crossed the line. And clearly, this probably wasn't their first offense. Your thoughts?
I was just going to say that. I'm sure that they have criminal records wherever they came from, and they were kicked out just for that reason. So to them, to what they, to commit another crime comes natural. And the viciousness of that attack indicates that back where they came from, they probably were able to get away with it. And
there's word that they came from Venezuela. How could we ever find out what their criminal history is? Could we ever?
Well, we can't, because we don't have relations with Venezuela. That's another problem.
Yeah, that is another problem. And do these countries even provide any information of the criminal history? There are reports that they're emptying out the prisons, some people say.
Right. Well, the countries that we have treaties with will supply that information. They should anyway. But, this happened with the Cuban boat lift back in the 80s. 25% of those people that came in had criminal records. And I believe it was that came out to about 25,000 people had criminal records. So it's easy for these countries who want to get rid of the criminals and undermine the U.S. to send them here.
Yeah, the famous Mariel boat lift. You're right. And think about the destruction and damage and everything that caused. As we're talking about all of this, how come, in the case when we see the officers, they didn't pull out a taser, they didn't pull out their gun? Do you think that was because they didn't want to, or they couldn't, or what was the reason?
Well, probably they got caught off guard. They didn't expect to get attacked like that. And I'm sure that under the current restrictions placed on the police, they were afraid to pull out their guns. But, the fact is, they should have their nightsticks, which they don't carry anymore. It's another big mistake, because the nightstick would have worked pretty well if they had used it. And another thing that bothers me, no citizen came to help them. There was a time when citizens would come to help. So that disturbs me also.
Why is that? Why do you think that they were not? You and I have some mutual friends who said, two words, one name, Daniel Penny, that people are afraid to get involved. Have we come to that?
Well, I think that's part of it. But also there's just a general breakdown in the relations with police and the community ever since the George Floyd situation. The police have lost a lot of respect. And for no good reason. Just because of that incident doesn't mean every cop in the country is bad. And the only people that are going to suffer is the general public, because the police will get the attitude, hey, why do anything? You know what? I'm getting paid. The hell with the public. And that's going to be a problem.
That's going to be a huge problem. And as you're talking about that too, there are also cases lately where somebody did intervene, a Good Samaritan. I think it was that crossing guard. He tried to break up a fight and then he got killed. So are people worried about intervening for a lot of different reasons?
Yes. It's just I think there's just a major breakdown in society. Things are not the way they were when I came in the police department. I just can't imagine an assault on cops like that in my time. And I did 40 years. I never saw anything like that.
Yeah.
I think fighters, but not a mob like that attacked the police in broad daylight.
Why is there such a breakdown that this could happen where, a mob of migrants are beating up on two cops and nobody does anything? What's going on?
Well, I think it has to do with the current administration, who is not taking a serious look at this. You have a problem with the district attorney here in Manhattan. The judges are bound by the silly no bail laws. These people should have been, bail would be set. They couldn't make the bail. They wind up in Rikers Island and they sit there till the next court appearance. And then they should be deported. But they're getting away with these things. And the fact that they fled to California, if that's true, it's unbelievable. They're here illegally and they're getting away with these things that no one else could get away with. You couldn't get away with it. I couldn't get away with it, but they will.
And why have we come to this point? Is it a combination of things? And who do you blame and what do you blame?
I blame the President of the United States and those that follow his policy.
And it's trickling down to these sanctuary cities. Ed, as we're talking about all these things too, we're also talking, this comes on a week where, city council in New York City passes the How Many Stops Act. They override Mayor Adams' veto. Your thoughts on how bad that's going to be for cops?
Well, that's pretty bad because there's going to be a tremendous amount of time taken up by the police, either in making out reports or questioning. Jumaane Williams said it takes only a couple of seconds to do it. It's nonsense. In a busy precinct where cops run from job to job, there's going to be a lot of time spent recording those encounters. And the encounters cover everything except just talking to another person. But if it's an investigative question, let me give you an example. Let's say there's a major crime committed, and detectives are out there interviewing hundreds of witnesses. That, according to this law that was passed, they would have to make a separate report out to every witness that they spoke to, in addition to the normal investigative report they would make out regarding the contact of that witness. So there's extra work involved. And and who's going to look at this? It makes no sense.
Talk about what kind of examples when you just said anything other than that. Like, give us a classic case where it just seems so absurd. Some of these level 1 stops that are really kind of minor, but that takes up a lot of time.
All right. I think I'm not sure if the police commissioner said it, but a missing child is a big deal. So what happens if a child goes missing, all stops are pulled out, and you have loads of cops going out there, canvassing the neighborhood, speaking to people, saying, did you see this kid? Do you have any idea? Showing pictures. According to the law, they would have to make out, the police would have to make out one of these reports, the innocent questions like that. And it's, that doesn't make sense either. None of it makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So why are they doing it? Is it a politics, or are they just so disconnected from reality? It hasn't hit their home or their friend's home or something. What is the reason that they don't understand? I mean, if you spend 5 minutes with a cop, and boy, as you talk about, you had decades at the NYPD, but you spend 5 minutes with a cop, it just makes common sense that you want to keep them on the street. Are they intentionally trying to keep them off the street?
Well, I guess there's a political motivation involved. And a lot of it has to do with race relations, which to me is totally unnecessary. You have a city that is, largely minority. The police department, we keep hearing this, is a majority minority. And I don't understand this reasoning behind trying to identify the race and gender of people. What good is it going to do? So obviously, it has to do more with race relations and anything else. There's no logical reason, as far as I'm concerned, to do all this.
Is there any way that there may be some meeting in the middle on the How Many Stops Act? Because the mayor came back and said he's going to try to somehow change it where maybe the lower ones won't be included. But it seems like city council, obviously, they got their way. They overrode him. It was a 42-9 vote. So overwhelmingly, they did that, Ed Mamet. But is there any way that there might be some middle ground, or do you think we're stuck with this? And where do we go from here? And what does it mean to police recruitment? Because sadly, who wants to be a cop in this environment?
Not too many people. Police members are retiring at a very rapid rate. But as far as modifying it, I don't know how much can be modified because there's, as you know, there's 4 levels of stops. And this stop one, the level 1 they're talking about, is the one that would require these reports where they weren't required before. So the police department would have to issue an operations order, and the operations order will have to be based on what the law says. And the law has to be interpreted. I have a copy of the law, and the investigative stops are covered under this law.
Wow. So that is going to just be voluminous. And then I would assume they're going to have to pay for a supervisor to look over the paperwork, make sure that it's done right, correct?
Yes, they're going to have to pay for it. And then there's the filing issue. We don't know if it's going to be computerized or it's going to be paper. But either way, you're going to have storage problems. If it's computerized, there's going to be a load of storage issues because you're talking about thousands and thousands of these reports. I just can't imagine anybody looking at them. And even if they read them, what are they going to get out of it?
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think is the goal? Like you just said, do you believe it's all, some to fit some quota? We did hear, I believe was it Adrian Adams, who's the speaker there at the New York City Council, saying, well, all these stops are happening in African-American communities. What do you say to people who say that's what this is about?
Well, that's where the crime is. The crime occurs in these areas, and that's where the police go. So what are you supposed to do? I mean, it's not that they're being singled out. You send cops to where crime is, and that's where the stops are going to be made, whether investigative, whether inquiry. And by the way, just a lot of these stops are just general inquiry stops. Like if you see somebody on the street, hanging around, and you say, "Oh, what are you doing here?" I'm waiting for a taxi. I'm waiting for a bus. Why should that be? Why should a report be required for that? I mean, it's just weird.
What's the morale also, Ed, of the NYPD? They're having trouble recruiting, clearly. What do you think is the future of the NYPD if these things keep getting tacked on to our great men and women in law enforcement?
Well, I think they're going to have to lower standards because the quality of personnel will be diminished. Standards will have to be lowered. Cops now are retiring before like I said, take me. I stayed in for 40 years. If I was in the department now, I would never stay. I would do my 20 and get out. So, it's going to create a major recruitment issue and a retention issue. And you want to retain the qualified people because they are the people that train the new people. And if you don't have them, things are going to be bad.
How many are also fleeing to other places, too? I know, like, even in the middle of COVID, we saw Florida advertising, hey, come here. And you see advertisements often on TV of other places saying, we want you because, of course, the NYPD, they are the best. They're so skilled, as you know. They're the best, the law enforcement force out there, hands down. They always go, you see, to crises overseas. But suddenly they're having crisis here at home. How many of them are also fleeing and saying, look, if I'm going to stay in law enforcement, maybe not do it in New York, sadly?
Well, I can't give you the numbers, but all I know from those in the department that I'm friendly with is that the retirement rate is very high. And it's high among the people who are senior. Senior people are not staying anymore either. You said not only you're losing, the lower level ranks, but the command level people are leaving too, and they're the people that you need to run the department. So it can't do any good. This bill, and that. Now, how about the? I know this is not in police work; it's more correction. but the stopping of the solitary confinement. That's going to be another major problem for the correction people.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And real quickly, explain why that is so important, that it should have stayed. But obviously, that's gone now, too.
Well, because you have violent prisoners who attack each other, and they attack correction officers. And, solitary confinement is a standard way of dealing with troublesome prisoners. It's been around ever since the penal system has been around. And, it doesn't make sense to do that either, to do away with it, because it's a very important tool that penal institutions have. So if you don't have solitary confinement, how are you going to control these people who are violent? It's a major problem. So law enforcement is getting whacked on all sides. Street enforcement, corrections, the courts, the district attorneys who won't prosecute. I don't see a great future for this country if things keep going the way they are.
Yeah, and boy, is that sad, because every citizen is in jeopardy when the police don't feel safe, when they don't feel supported. And that is a sad outlook, but I think so many people feel the same way you do. Ed Mamet, I just want to thank you. And obviously, you know how much I love our men and women in blue. I know all the people who listen to this podcast do too. And I encourage them also to check out your great podcast with Kevin Schroeder, Cop Talk podcast, which always had such great stuff. And also, everybody, be sure to subscribe and share this really important, powerful podcast. Ed Mamet, thank you for your great service and your great insight. And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.